She woke up one morning and didn't recognize her life. Not because she'd lost her memory, but because something inside her had quietly unraveled. The career she once fought for felt like a gilded cage. The friendships she nurtured became echoes of old versions of herself. And the mirror, oh, the mirror, reflected a face she wasn't sure she ever truly knew. Something had awakened, and it terrified her. But this isn't a tragedy. It's the beginning of something real. On an ordinary Tuesday, Miriam stood in her kitchen, holding a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The hum of the fridge was the only sound. Her phone buzzed beside her, meetings, messages, reminders. But something inside her had gone silent. She couldn't name it. It felt like pressure behind glass, clear, invisible, but ready to break. She called in sick that morning, wandered the city with no destination. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt real. The billboards screamed happiness, the streets pulsed with speed, but nothing touched her. At the edge of a quiet park, she sat on a bench next to an old man feeding birds. Her eyes were red, her shoulders slumped. Without looking at him, she whispered, almost to herself, "I don't know who I am anymore. Everything feels hollow." The old man glanced at her, then back to the birds. "You look like someone who just realized the game was rigged." She blinked. "What do you mean?" He gave a soft chuckle. "We're born into stories we didn't write. Most people never question them. But once you do, it hurts. Until it doesn't." That was the moment something in Miriam began to wake up. Not to some grand cosmic vision, but to a quiet, unbearable truth. What she'd believed all her life might not be true. What happened to Miriam wasn't just a passing emotional dip. It was the beginning of what many call a spiritual awakening. But what does that actually mean? A spiritual awakening isn't about finding all the answers. It's about realizing the questions you've been asking were too small. It often begins not with bliss, but with disorientation. It feels like your inner compass suddenly spins, pointing away from everything you thought mattered. The Indian sage Ramana Maharshi described awakening as the direct recognition of the self beyond the personality. While Eckhart Tolle wrote, "Awakening is not becoming something you are not, it is letting go of what you are not." Most awakenings don't start with epiphanies. They begin in the mundane, in the quiet ache of a life that doesn't fit anymore. There are signs, though. A subtle but growing feeling that life has become performative. A deep inner pull to slow down, to reflect, to question. An inexplicable grief for something you haven't yet lost, but know you must. Sometimes it follows a loss, a breakup, a burnout. Other times it comes when everything seems fine, but inside a deeper self begins to whisper, "This isn't it." George Gurdjieff once said, "Most people don't realize they're asleep. They begin to wake up only when life shocks them." The shock isn't a punishment, it's a beginning. Because spiritual awakening isn't about becoming better, it's about becoming real. It dissolves what you thought you were, not to leave you empty, but to make space for what's always been waiting underneath. It doesn't make life easier, it makes life truer. It invites you to see the world not through inherited beliefs or borrowed dreams, but through the eyes of someone who's no longer pretending. And once you taste that truth, you can't go back. Spiritual awakening often begins not with light, but with loss. We fear it because it feels like dying, not of the body, but of the self we thought we were. The roles we played, the names we answered to, the things we wanted all start to lose meaning. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And that's precisely the fear. Awakening demands that we face ourselves. Not our curated image, not the polished mask, but the raw, trembling core beneath it all. This confrontation is terrifying because it reveals the illusion of control, the fragility of ego, the weight of choices never questioned. Comfort is seductive. Even if we are unhappy, we cling to the familiar because it protects us from the unknown. Spiritual awakening strips that comfort away. Suddenly, the job feels meaningless. The relationship feels hollow. The success feels staged. And the worst part? You can't unsee it. Aldous Huxley once wrote, "Most human beings have an almost infinite capacity for taking things for granted. Awakening is what happens when that capacity collapses." But here's the truth. The collapse is not punishment. It is preparation. Only when the old structures fall apart can something real begin. What illusions have you outgrown but still hold on to out of fear? What lies beyond the fear, the loss, the collapse? Not perfection, not bliss, but truth, presence, aliveness. Awakening is not about escaping the world or floating above pain. It's about seeing clearly, feeling deeply, and living honestly. Krishnamurti once said, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." Spiritual awakening offers no guarantees, but it does offer one thing most people never touch: authenticity. It is the quiet freedom of no longer needing to pretend. It is the strange peace of knowing that you are not your thoughts, not your fears, not your name. You are the awareness behind it all. And once you taste that, the old life will never fit again. What would your life look like if you stopped pretending and started remembering who you truly are? The conclusion is, most people fear spiritual awakening because it dismantles everything they thought they needed. But those who walk through the fire often find that what remains is more real than anything they left behind. So if the ground beneath you is shaking, if the life you built no longer feels like home, if you're waking up afraid, take heart.